everyone. Our story today is called The Two Bobbies, a true story of Hurricane Katrina, friendship, and survival. The city of New Orleans on the mighty Mississippi is a place many people and pets call home. Jamming with jazz and dressing up fancy for Mardi Gras, it bustled with life day and night. But on August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina bore down on the city and everyone who lived there, including a wisp of a cat and one puppy. Winds roared to 110 miles an hour. Rain pounded hard and fast. Strong winds pushed walls of water from the Gulf of Mexico into Lake Pontchartrain. Some of the levees holding back the lake gave way. Water poured into the city deeper and deeper. People who had stayed through the storm were finally forced to leave their homes. They had to say goodbye to everything they loved. Many were told they could not take their pets. Bobbi and Bob Cat were left behind. Bobbi had been tethered with a length of chain. Bob Cat stayed by her side. Together in the silent heat, they waited for help to come. After the storm, volunteers from across the country came to New Orleans to lend a hand. They brought food and water. They rescued people stranded on the roof of their homes, and they rescued many animals. But with so much damage and confusion, the two Bobbies were not rescued. Their food and water gone, Bobbi finally broke free. She dragged along the broken chain with Bob Cat close beside her. In the early days after the hurricane, the two Bobbies tried to make their way around oily water littered with debris. After the waters receded, they traveled the buckled streets with no place to call home. Month after month passed as Bobbi and Bobcat wandered the devastated city. Their days and nights were filled with danger. Packs of hungry, homeless dogs roamed the streets, fighting smaller animals for food. Were Bobbi and Bobcat chased away from any scrap of food they might have found? With little food to eat or clean water to drink, Bobbi's ribs began to show. Bobcat's brown sugar markings started to fade to a dull white. One day in January, 4 long months later, Bobbi and Bobcat strayed onto a job site. A construction crew hammered and sawed, fixing up a motel damaged by the hurricane. A worker's dog rushed over to play with Bobbi. The dog's owner, Rich, noticed Bobcat too. He saw how thin the two strays were and began feeding them. He trimmed Bobbi's chain, leaving enough to jingle on the ground because Bobcat liked to follow it. But every time Rich tried to touch Bobcat, Bobbi growled. After a week of caring for the two Bobbies, Rich got some bad news when his boss came to the job site. He had given permission for one dog, but not two dogs and a cat. He said Bobbi and Bobcat had to go. Rich was determined to take them to a safe place, but Bobbi still growled whenever Rich got too near. Bobcat. She would not let him pick up or even touch her friend. So Rich rattled a bowl full of kibble. Bobbi followed the food into Rich's van, and Bobcat followed Bobbi. Rich drove to a temporary shelter that Best Friends Animal Society had set up in Celebration Station, a former video game arcade. The shelter was completely filled with homeless dogs and cats, but a volunteer welcomed them in, even naming them Bobbi and Bobcat for their bob tails. They were placed in separate rooms. Do you think that's going to go well, them being separated? Probably not. All night long, Bobbi howled and barked. Bobcat paced back and forth. No one could sleep with Bobbi making such a ruckus, so volunteers made a large pen for her and put Bobcat in his small carrier inside Bobbi's new cage. Bobbi lay in front of Bobcat and whimpered. The volunteers opened the cage to see what would happen. The two Bobbies touched noses, together again at last. For the next few minutes, the volunteers studied Bobbi and Bobcat. They noticed how Bobcat stayed close to Bobbi. They saw how he walked with his neck stuck out and how he carefully lifted his front paws, placing them down as if he were unsure of what he might step on. Someone waved a hand in front of Bobcat's face. Bobcat did not jump back. Another volunteer waved her hand. Bobcat did not even blink. Everyone was stunned. Bobcat was blind. All that time on her own, Bobbi had been Bobcat's seeing eye dog. The volunteers and even an ace pet detective searched for their family with no success. 1 month later, Celebration Station closed its doors, but Bobbi and Bobcat still did not have a home. There was only one thing left to try. The two Bobbies made a television appearance on CNN's Anderson Cooper 360. The very next day, the Best Friend volunteers left New Orleans. One of them drove Bobbi and Bobcat to the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary in Utah, where they would stay until a new family could be found. They were on their way west when the news came in. Hundreds of people wanted to adopt them. Because they were on TV and people heard their story, suddenly everybody wanted to give them a home. It would take a very special family to adopt them together. The volunteers made a list and invited everyone on it to come and meet the two Bobbies. Only Melinda and her Boston Terrier Gus Gus made the long trip to Utah. That night, Bobbi and Bobcat had a sleepover with Melinda and Gus Gus in one of the cottages on the sanctuary grounds. Would the two Bobbies choose Melinda? The next morning, everyone knew the answer. Bobbi and Bobcat were stuck to Melinda like Velcro. They also liked Gus Gus, and he liked them. Finally, Bobbi and Bobcat had found their new family. Now they live with Melinda, Gus Gus, and Amelia on a ranch in southern Oregon. Bobcat has a window seat to sit in. He likes to play with the robot vacuum cleaner. He turns it on all by himself. Bobbi helps with the ranch chores. She goes along on horse rides. On hot days, she lounges in the frog and fairy pond. At the end of every day, Bobbi and Bobcat snuggle up together. They have toys and treats and lots of new friends, even a camel. But best of all, they have each other. So here is a picture of the two Bobbies. Now, this story took place 15 years ago. So Bobbi is probably not still alive anymore because most dogs only live 10 to 15 years. And Bobcat, she might be alive. Sometimes cats can live up to 20 years. But you know that they had a very good life with Melinda and Gus Gus. So there was The Two Bobbies by Kirby Larson and Mary Nethery. I'll see you next time.